Hey, I brought my pen.
I brought my pen too.
Okay, we're ready then. Okay.
Good. Okay. Yeah.
Hey guys,
You know
welcome.
deal.
We
How's it
are
going,
so
everyone?
prepared. We both brought a pen. Okay, so
This way, yes. So if anyone wants to talk, we put our pen up, and then the other person knows that we want to talk.
and that's what we're doing right now. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. That was good. Yes, good. Well,
Deal or
hi
no deal
everybody.
is
Welcome. There we
extremely
go.
popular. You just said. You see, you're doing it already. You're cutting me off. Where's the pen? Go ahead. You go first.
Hey everybody, welcome to Deal or No Deal. We're starting a new kind of format with this. We're going to put the numbers up so you can see. We'll have some conversation, ask some questions if you have them. But really, we're here to watch the man in action here. Wayne will be talking us through the deal, basically, or no deal, depending. He'll talk
Mm.
us through the details. And this is really cool. This has come from one of our One Damn Deal challengers. So a little bit of tooting our own horns here. We're getting some deals or no deals happening, which is really gratifying because we did the 6 weeks. 6 weeks is over, but it as much as the 6 weeks is done, it continues. So okay.
Yeah. There's like you said, there's plenty of potential deals coming, and there's also lots of no deals coming, which is good because people are getting out there, they're practicing, they're learning what to avoid, they're learning what people are going to say, and the more you know, the more you can prepare for those amazing deals that eventually will come. So it's good to get out there. It's good to practice, so that when that super deal comes along, you're ready. So yeah, one of our one damn dealers sent this over, and he was asking for advice. And I'm going to put up on the screen. So this is in Edmonton, in Mill Woods, and the house was built in 1991. It's a bungalow. It's got a double front attached garage. It's approximately 1,365 square feet. 3 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms upstairs. It is what he claims to be a solid house that has been well maintained, but it's a little dated. With those 1991 houses, I mean, I can picture it. I can see exactly what it looks like. It's yellow laminate floor and the same kind of matching either yellow laminate cabinets or white cabinets with circular knobs. It's getting around that time where it needs to be replaced if you want to get the full value. So that's essentially to draw a picture of what it probably looks like. The sellers are older, with grown children who have already moved to an acreage 90 minutes away from the city. So I'm assuming that's the sellers that have already moved away, and this house is sitting vacant on the market. They want out, and they don't want to have the responsibility of taking care of the house over the winter. So a little more information that I was given just to give you a full picture. The sellers are, when they say older, they're a little older. So this investor was concerned about a long-term agreement for sale because his fear of the sellers potentially passing, which is a little morbid, but it's something you do need to consider. He's also a little concerned about the fact that with the sellers being older and something like that happening, or perhaps the sellers not being capable of maybe they were put into a home or something like that, the children might come along and start asking questions like, what is this thing that you guys signed? Did you take advantage of my parents? You know what I mean? So there's a few concerns in that respect. But here's the numbers for the deal. The seller's initial asking price is $370,000. The realtor, who they did not hire, they just asked some information. The realtor suggested that they sell it for $360,000. Now, the current tax assessed value is $375,000, which normally the tax assessed value is a little bit lower. So it looks like, based on their initial asking price, that they're just trying to move it quickly. They're a little concerned about the snowflakes coming, so let's just move it fast and get it off our hands. The market value from our investors' input, after the investor asked their own realtor, the market value is approximately $330,000 to $340,000, so even lower actually. I'm not sure why. I don't really have that information. I don't know why the tax assessed value is higher. The market value is probably based on the fact that it's original and it needs some work. The current mortgage amount is $176,000, and they've also got a HELOC on there. I can't recall what the HELOC was used for, but there's a HELOC as well with $166,500 worth of balance. So the total amount owing is $342,500, and based on the investor's realtor comparables, the market value is $330,000 to $340,000. So there's lots of information to kind of consume there. What number do you use, or do you assume that the value is actually worth? What are you willing to pay? And then,
well, let's check in here, Wayne, for a minute and see what are people's, what's jumping out at them for this. For me, it's interesting that it's got a HELOC. There's cautions right away when you have a line of credit attached to a property, and certain steps that have to be taken right there.
Like, what kind of things do you think would need to be done with that HELOC? Is it an open HELOC? Is it like a readvanceable where they can continue taking money out? Perhaps you might want to look into closing that out as one of your terms.
And now if you do that, okay, well, let's keep that in mind. We'll circle back to the HELOC. And can you fold it to the other mortgage? Can you combine it and have it amortized rather than? And what does that do to numbers cash flowing? But I know that we haven't got to cash flowing yet, but
yes, and I can't remember from the other slides or not, but I do know that the HELOC is interest only payments, and I'm not 100% certain on that, but the interest rate is going to be very important to know, because if you're paying interest only payments, that could be a higher interest rate. You don't know where they got that HELOC from. It could be like a really high interest rate Alpine credit kind of thing.
Okay, so the interest, well, okay, so maybe we want to come back to that. I don't want to take up all your time on that. So you lead again.
I'll take the pen back. Yeah, so these are the numbers. So just from taking a glance at it right now, you just want to determine, okay, what's an appropriate amount that we could offer? We also need to revisit what were the seller's motivations. They really just want out right now, but would they be willing to pay you in order to take the house? Because if you're only willing to pay $330,000 and they owe $342,500, there is a difference of $12,500 that somebody needs to make up. And if your purchase price is $330,000, then that means that they need to pay the difference. And good practice would be to get them pay that up front, as opposed to assuming that they'll pay it later on. One other option is you can potentially pay a little bit more than market value. Just adjust your terms accordingly to make sure that, okay, I'm going to pay $12,500 over what it's worth, but here are the terms that I would need in return. I'm going to flip it over to the next slide, because we do need a little more information, because we want to know what the mortgage payments are, what the HELOC interest-only payments are right there, the insurance, the property taxes, etc. We do have a question here. I'm just going to pull it up. The question's from Barb. Wouldn't the seller have to requalify to combine the HELOC with the mortgage? Yes. Yes. They would. However, if it meant that it could lower the payment significantly or lower the interest rate on the HELOC, it might be worth it. If you're about to walk away from this deal, it might be worth having that conversation with the seller to see if you can resolve the issue. And Barb had also mentioned to offer $342,500. For sure. Some investors are okay with offering a little bit more so long as the terms complement it. Other investors would like to see some equity up front. They want to get it under market value. Really depends on where you are in your investment career, and what risk you're willing to take. So the expected monthly carrying costs, if it were rented, when rented, would be $1,126 for the mortgage. That's P&I. For the HELOC, interest-only payments is $450. The insurance would be approximately $125. Property taxes, $288. The investors also added in maintenance of 7%, so that's $133. And no property management, so the investor is going to manage themselves. So it's good that they put aside 7% for maintenance, because if everything is original, there's probably going to be some things over the duration of the term that are going to need to be repaired or replaced. I do not recall the condition of the big ticket items. Like, I do believe the roof was new, and there were a couple other items that were new, but the hot water tank was going to need to be taken care of in the near future. So yeah, the maintenance percentage there is a very good idea, to make sure you got some money set aside and allocated for that. Lastly, what we'll do is we'll pull up the closing costs and the income projections. So the closing costs for writing up an agreement for sale document, legal fees for the investor would be somewhere in the range of $2,800. Home inspection would be about $400. Now, the projected expected rent would be between $1,800 and $2,000 a month. So the investor averaged it out to about $1,900, which for that area and that size of house is reasonable. It does have a double attached garage. So based on the gross expenses of $2,122, and you subtract the monthly rent, I will remove this. Sorry, 1 second. The negative cash flow would be about negative $222. So now,
so if this were just Wayne, if this were just a straight buy and hold, traditional plain vanilla real estate deal, doesn't look like it's quite a deal. You're paying a little bit over market and you have a negative cash flow. If you're just buying a straight investment property, probably it's a no deal.
For sure, because you're sinking $250 a month into it, right, out of your pocket. At the same time, the investor was projecting to put $133 a month away, but again, you're probably going to dip into that and probably more. So every year you're setting aside approximately $2,500 out of your pocket. Now, some investors might look at that and be like, well, if I wanted to buy this traditionally, I'd have to come up with a 20% down payment. So this is better than that. This is almost like a savings plan for my down payment. I'm setting aside $2,500 a year as opposed to coming up with $70,000 up front. So there are some benefits there. Now
the mortgage pay down, because of the HELOC again, I keep coming back to that darn HELOC.
Yes.
The mortgage pay down is not as exciting when you have a HELOC. It's interest only payments.
Right. I mean, if we continue to keep today's interest rates, nice, low, sexy 2% interest rates, then perhaps, a lot of that mortgage portion is going towards principal. So let's assume, let's be generous and say $600 a month, $7,200 a year. How many years would you need on your term in order to make this work? And what's the exit strategy? Is the exit strategy to close and get your own mortgage at the end of the AFS term, or is it to sell? And if it's to sell, you have to remember that there's going to be additional closing costs at the end of your term that are going to pay for a realtor, they're going to pay for a lawyer, you're going to have to do some touch-ups and some repairs. Are you going to do a full reno, or are you just going to do a quick paint? How long is it going to be vacant while you're trying to sell it? So estimated realtor cost would be 7% for the first 100,000 and 3.5 for the remaining. So 15,000, 16,000 plus other closing costs and holding fees.
So based on your numbers, we've got 36,000 in mortgage paydown
over a 5-year period.
For a 5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps.
Yeah, for sure.
That feels better.
It does. I mean, now you also need to subtract the negative cash flow of $2,500 a year. So subtract 12,500 from that.
Okay.
And now you're down to 18,500, something like that. 17,500
from the 36.
Oh, from 36. I'll let you do the math. I don't have a calculator.
Okay, so that's 24,500.
Right, and then
the realtor cost.
That was, yeah.
It's important to note that when you are doing creative strategy deals, to consider your exit strategy and work that in, because if you're only holding it for the term of the AFS, the agreement for sale, then maybe it's not going to work. But if you're continuing to hold it, well, or rent lease optioning it. There's other options for it.
Right. And that's just like any real estate investment. If you plan to buy something in a flat to negative market and you want to sell it in 5 years, you have to remember that you're going to have to pay a realtor and closing costs. So any money that you've made, you have to subtract the closing costs in order to sell it. So if your plan is to sell it, it might not be the best move because it's going to chew into a lot of your profits there. Now, if you're planning to close and get a mortgage at the end of it, it definitely will work or could work. So would 5 years be enough? Or would you need a longer term?
Well, that would be definitely an individual investor consideration for that.
For sure. Again, it kind of comes back to where you are in your investment career. Like for someone who's just starting out, this is a huge opportunity to get into it for a couple $1,000s, right? Yes, you're taking on a little more risk and your profit's not as big. This isn't a home run, but it's an opportunity. That's, if you don't take this opportunity, what's your other move in order to get ahead? Now, for a seasoned investor, they might look at this and be like, I can do better, right? And they're maybe a seasoned investor is only looking for home runs. So it's important to know where you are and what level of risk you're willing to take at what stage of your career. Donna, there is not a whole lot of questions today.
No, they're not yet. Well, there's a lot of information.
For sure.
Now, there is a little kitchen in the... Oh, tell me when you're putting me back on screen.
Sorry.
There is a little kitchen and in the basement. So is there potential for development down there? They were not sure if the windows were to code, but I mean, it's not the biggest deal to put in bigger windows, is it?
$1,500, $2,000 to cut a bigger hole. I mean, obviously you need engineered drawings as well. But it's possible if there's a separate entrance. Alternatively, maybe someone wants to rent it to extended family, where an in-law suite wouldn't be, so long as the window's conformed, it wouldn't
Right.
have to be a legal basement suite. Maybe you could charge a little bit more rent because of the fact that it had an in-law suite and maybe some extended family would be living there.
So Barb, yes. Oh, Barb, yes, there is a basement and it is finished. It's not ideal for a separate suite, but yes, it has 2 bedrooms in there. And again, so I'm thinking they probably used it as an in-law suite type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, we can go back to the motivation. The sellers are older and they don't want to deal with this house anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the discussion that the investor's been having with them. They're open to something creative. They're open to finding a solution. And our investor is built up some really great trust with them. And it sounds like they're open to this. They just kind of want to hear the details of how it's all going to work out. How much money am I getting now? How long? That kind of stuff. And this is where the investor's kind of having some trouble because they're trying to determine whether this is something they should move forward on and how long. For me, when I first looked at this, I said, you're going to need some more time. You're going to need a longer term. But then you kind of go back to that. If they're older, and I don't know how old, if they're older and perhaps they can't take care of themselves, or maybe they might not be able to take care of themselves in the future, I would say you'd want to have a very good conversation with whomever is going to be managing their finances or who's going to be taking care of them in the future, because you don't want to be accused of taking advantage of someone. Someone asked, would Airbnb work for this property? You'd have to check with an Airbnb specialist and run the numbers. Just like market, rents and demand, there are programs to determine whether Airbnb would work in this area. I'm not sure where this commenter's from, but this is in Mill Woods. This is southeast Edmonton. Not a whole lot of attractions nearby. At all. There's nothing nearby. You're pretty far from an airport. You're pretty far from downtown. You're pretty far from the West Edmonton Mall. You're at the bottom right, and there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. But that doesn't mean that there isn't demand. I had a great conversation with Coleman Washbrook about this recently, and he had said that maybe, it wasn't Coleman. It was Carlos. I apologize. It was Carlos that said sometimes the investors who are doing Airbnb or short-term rentals are always looking for those hot spots, but that also means that there's not a lot of demand in those other corners of the city, and there's less competition. So it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be an opportunity there, but the investor would have to do a little bit of research to determine whether there's enough demand to make sure he covers his monthly costs. Don Serter said, that's a pretty big house. I would think it would be a good RTO for a family. Yes, I think Donna kind of gave me a bit of a muzzle earlier and just said we're just going to stick to the example that this would be best, or we're using this as a long-term buy and hold. But yes, you and I both know that RTO is a great solution for properties like this. And
I did not muzzle you.
You did it in a very polite way. But that's why we had that creative combinations course on Saturday was
which was so good, by the way. It was fun. Okay, sorry.
It was a lot of fun. It was like it was nice to brag a little bit about some of the cool deals that I've done and problems that I've solved. I really do love what I do, and I love combining creative strategies. So that was a lot of fun. And
a lot of people got a lot of value out of hearing when there are complications, how to resolved it. So good on you. And they really liked Neil's joint venture. What would you even call that? The different approaches to joint ventures
Right.
with the numbers. It was pretty cool.
He went deep. He went
Yeah.
really deep. But just,
Why I love my
again, just
focus
like
trees.
Andrea, he's got a way just it flows so nicely. They're really good. They're really good. And yes, Barb says creative combination session was awesome. Yeah, I'm surprised it took that long to do something like that, for you guys to put something on like that, because that was extremely valuable. And to reel it back into what we were talking about, for a situation like this where you're kind of on the fence, whether do I take that risk? What kind of terms do I need? Well, what if I were to combine it with another strategy and suddenly now this deal works? And that's what Don did. Don's like, guys, like, why don't you just do an RTO? Makes total sense. So I digress. There were a couple comments that I missed here.
Yes, show the numbers again.
Sure, I'm just going to answer Barb's questions real fast here. So Barb mentioned no money up front because they owe more than the property is worth. Yes. So if there's no equity to be paid out, unpaid seller's equity, then there would, or the purchase price is equal to their outstanding mortgage balance, then yes, it would be zero money down. She'd also mentioned investor to take over expenses and refinance at end of 5-year term. Yes. So the investor could, at the end of the AFS term, they would refinance or close with their own mortgage. Now, Walter missed the number, so I'm going to go through all the numbers again. And so obviously, again, this is a 1991 bungalow, double front attached garage, about 1,300 square feet, 3 bedrooms up, kitchen in the basement. Sellers are older, and they've already moved away, 90 minutes away, an hour and a half from the city. So they don't want to be dealing with this. Snowflakes are falling. So now they're at the point where, like, let's just get rid of it. They've had a discussion with the investor. Here's the numbers. I'll let you read through that real fast, Walter. And I will remove your comment so you can see it. Here's the expected carrying costs, including setting aside 7% for maintenance. There is a HELOC that has interest-only payments. Now, I'm not 100% sure on what those interest-only payments are. If I had my calculator, I can pull it up, but
it's 3 point something.
3 point something?
Mm-hmm.
What was the
165? 166.5 is the balance of the HELOC.
You're right. It's both 3.3-ish. So 3.3%.
Could you say that again, Wayne? Sorry. Could you say that?
3.
No, you're right.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It sounds really cool, doesn't it? Apparently, you already did the math. Is this just? Can we stick to the plan, or are you just
sorry?
An excuse to make fun of me on the internet? So here's the closing costs. So legal fees, again, if you are getting an agreement for sale document written up by your favorite lawyer, it's approximately $2,800. Home inspection is about $400. You definitely want to get an inspection done. Actually, can I go off on a tangent on that?
Yeah,
Side
do.
note,
Yep.
a lot of people ask, should I get an inspection on an agreement for sale? Yes. You get an inspection whenever you buy a property. You want to know what's going on. Some people think because it's a fast close and you just really want to get this deal that they could skip out on the inspection. There might be $15,000, $10,000 worth of stuff that need to be repaired. There might be stuff on the, you never know. You definitely always want to get it, even if it's a new property. Back to the program, monthly rent projected would be about $1,800 to $2,000 a month. So he averaged out at about $1,900. So based on that, removing the banner, it would be about negative $222 cash flow.
Now, of course, there is the school of thought, we did mention this, but I know people are coming and going in through, is that $200 a month is not bad for a down payment to pay to get into a property.
Right. Over a 5-year term, in the example that we use, that would work out to be about $12,500. If you bought this retail, $342,000 would be $69,000.
Hmm.
If you bought it with a conventional mortgage of 20% down. So do the math. What's your return for 5 years if you put 20% down? 69,000. And what's your return on your investment if you put 12,500 down? Your ROI goes through the roof. It's way better, way better.
Okay, so give me real numbers on that, please.
Well, put me on the spot. Okay, so assuming that we're not selling it at the end and we're going to refinance it, or we're going to close on that after 5 years. You said it was $36,000 of the profits.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 36,000 is the mortgage pay down on just the mortgage part, not addressing the HELOC.
I'll admit, I always struggle with ROI when it works out to be more profit than the investment. So I can never remember how to calculate it. Do you divide the investment from the total profits, which would make 288%?
Yeah, because you're putting so little down, right?
So
much
36,000
little input.
12,500.
Crazy, hey?
288% return. Now, if you had to put $69,000 down and you made 36, your ROI would be 52%.
No.
Yep.
Over 5 years. Or you're just doing straight ROI.
Oh, straight ROI for the 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You want to divide that by 5, simple, it's about 10.4% per year. Still not bad. Not bad, but not great. It's not a great real estate investment. I wouldn't tie that kind of money up and pay retail for a property. But there's a huge added benefit with getting into a property where someone is going to carry the financing for you. It frees up one of your mortgages. You're not tying one up, which are very valuable. And as well, you're only getting into it for less than 5%, 10% down. What is that? You're getting into it for significantly less.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of value in that. That's the two big, most valuable items or components of an agreement for sale. The fact that someone's going to carry the financing for you, and as well, you're going to get into it for significantly less than you would if you went the traditional way. What is that down payment? Over 5 years. 3.6% down payment.
Oh, over 5 years.
Yes, paid over 5 years. You're right. It's not paid up front. It's paid over 5 years. So that's kind of, we're not talking a whole heck of a lot about the AFS deal analyzer that I created, but that was a bonus for anyone who came to the creative combinations course last Saturday. But that's what essentially the reason why we created the AFS deal analyzer was to shine a light on the value of the opportunity of agreement for sales. Because a lot of people get stuck on this. They're like, is this a good deal? Is it not a good deal? Because they're looking through the lens of how you would analyze a property if you were to be buying it traditionally. And if you look at this traditionally, it's a horrible investment. Horrible. Doesn't work. Always buy for cash flow. It's rule number 1. There's no cash flow. Always buy in a strong market. Let's be honest, Edmonton's been flat. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity. The only benefit you have in Edmonton right now is mortgage paydown and cash flow. Mm-hmm. So it's just a great example of, if you can find an opportunity like this to get into it for significantly less and get someone to carry the mortgage, this deal that was otherwise probably a pass is now actually not that bad. And there are tons of these deals right now, considering the market that we're in with everything going on, oil and COVID and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no shortage of these deals right now. So for the remaining few who are left, yes or no? And what terms would you like to see? I'm going to pull you back in, Donna.
Thank you for warning me. I was ready.
So what would you like to see if you're going to take this on? What kind of terms would you want? What price would you pay?
I think that it definitely would be worth looking deeper into. Maybe getting out the financing schedule and start putting it all together, because as we said, there's opportunity here. Not the traditional retail buy and hold, but getting in with no money down. There's more value to that than just the dollar sign. The opportunity that shows. All of a sudden, you've got your name, you've got income, it's a big deal. So I'm excited for our odd one. I like that better. Our odd one. One damn deal.
I think there's a lot of value to be leveraged from these. I mean, I know because I did it. I firsthand, this is exactly what I did. I took on deals that I would otherwise never touch if it were my own money and I were getting a mortgage. But I saw the opportunity that came with it. I saw that I was able to get into properties and start profiting for zero money down. As well, I was able to leverage that to joint venture partners, because before I was just a guy that had a couple properties. Why should I invest my equity, my cash, my savings with you? Who are you? Now I can show I do have properties. I am an expert. I acquired this. Would you like to joint venture on it? Another creative combination that we're not going to talk about.
I was considering, but of course that's a good one to do for sure.
For sure.
You all of a sudden have a track record, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Leverage. I did it. I 100% I did it. It's exactly what I did. I try and get more and more students to do this. Take advantage of this opportunity where you can invest your time into finding some deals like this, build up a reputation, attract joint venture partners, build up your credibility, your expertise. Say no more.
So there's a few more comments. Don says, there, yeah. Then that's just gravy, isn't it? That Don says that was using $600 per month pay down, but I think there may be more principal paid than half with their existing mortgage. Very much so. If you can start to envision a deal when you're being conservative and make it work within your boundaries, right? You set your own creative model, and then that was in the challenge. So, yeah, so absolutely, it's just gravy at this point. If we can say, you know what, I'm happy if it's 600, and then if it's 700, and in 5 years, there's a chance it's more. Yeah, that's great.
I'm assuming this is Valden. Valden that said, don't forget the issue of building permits for decks and basement renovations. You need to know what you're dealing with. Yes, absolutely. Your lawyer will definitely help out with that, because you're going to request an RPR and your lawyer is going to review it with you and say, does everything look like it's supposed to? You want to make sure that all the proper permits have been pulled for everything. And also look for the RPR. So the RPR, the next question Walter asked, what's an RPR? It's a real property report. So the sellers are...
In Alberta, it's called a real property report. It's a building location certificate, a survey certificate in other spots.
Gotcha. Barb had asked, is it realistic to find a tenant who will pay $1,900 a month in rent? Do your research. I just told you from my personal experience, because I live in Mill Woods. in Edmonton. I know the market rents. They're normally capping at around 1,700 to 1,800. However, if it's a larger house with a double attached garage, it is a little more appealing.
And potentially with the in-law suite, you can have the extended family type of setup.
But the investor pulled those numbers. So the investor probably did a little bit of research on that. If it's a little more appealing and bigger, you can ask for a little bit more. That also may mean that it might be on the market a little bit longer to find a good tenant. So Dawn says, I would have them redo the mortgage to get rid of the HELOC and consider some longer options. Sure. So when she says get rid of the HELOC, what do you think she means?
Tie it into the existing mortgage.
A refinance.
Is my guess what that would be.
However, would they be able to? Where is one? If the value is $360,000, and you can leverage up to 80%.
Somebody might go, "Hey, wait a minute." The bank is going to go, "Hey, wait a minute. I just did the math." Potentially not a when.
Womp womp. I don't think so. Because the total mortgage amount is $342. If the house is worth $360, they won't lend more than 80%. So I think it's stuck that way.
So just have it stop. Yeah.
It is at 3%.
Don't rock the boat for sure.
It is at 3%. And assuming the mortgage portion of it is probably at a 2 to 3% as well, that's not horrible. It would be worse if the HELOC was like 7% and you're paying interest-only payments. So I don't think it would make much of a difference if they put them together. It would probably work out to be about the same interest payment, and you probably have to pay more principal, right?
Yeah, so then your cash flow changes
significantly. So I think it's actually great that it's in this.
Yeah. All we want to do is make sure that they can't use it anymore, right?
Yeah.
That they're not not doing the Smith maneuver on you.
Valden is pretty proud. He finally figured out the whole StreamYard thing, and now we can see his face and his name. So yeah, what he's referring to is if you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, you can authorize StreamYard to show your name and your picture. So that way, when you comment, because we can only see anyone who's opted in. So otherwise it would say.
You can see the comments though.
We can see the comments, but it'll say Facebook user. So if you want to have your name seen or for us to know who you are, then just head to that website. It takes 2 seconds. Barb has her input. Barb says, my deal would be no money down. The negative cash flow would be adjusted off the final sale price. So if it's negative $12,500, she would reduce that from the sale price. AFS term would be 5 years. Her exit strategy would be an RTO, which is rent to own, because I don't live close and can't self-manage. That definitely helps. If your tenant is the buyer as well, they're going to be taking a little more care. Plus, they're responsible too, because that's going to be their end. That's going to be their home. So it's a little easier to manage than stopping in there every 3 months. And Barb would still set aside $133 a month for maintenance. Though she wouldn't need to, she still would.
And I imagine if you're doing an RTO, you wouldn't have the negative cash flow.
Yeah, the cash flow issue would be gone because your option credits would offset it. But we're not talking about that.
So the Barb is saying deal. Okay, gotcha. Potential deal. Good.
Yeah, we got one deal.
One vote.
Valden mentions, if you can find a solution to this buy, you are the only game in you are the only game in town. Likely without your creativity, there will be no deal or no transaction. You can pretty much write what you want to a point. He's right.
Isn't that the magic of creative strategies? If you understand strategy, you recognize the opportunities.
I love that.
And these sellers recognize that you're bringing opportunity, because how are they selling otherwise? They can't afford a realtor.
That's exactly it. They can't. And snowflakes are falling. Is it snowing out right now? No, but it was earlier. As it's great early on, it's a great tip. It's great early on to figure out what exactly their problem is and when their deadline is. Because a lot of times they'll be like, I need this solution. I'm in this pickle and I need it by then. You can leverage that, because if they are not down for it now, keep watching. When they get close to that deadline, their motivation will change.
Always leave the door open.
Never close the door, ever. That's why trust building is so important. Lots of comments. Valden mentioned that as an older couple, they may not qualify for a refinance, especially given the values now.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think we're all agreed that we won't touch the HELOC in that way. Most we'll do is try to we will have it stop. Yeah.
In the 11th hour, Sean
there
shows
he
up.
is. He always shows up, though.
Yeah. Dawn had a question. How do you ensure they are not using the home equity line of credit further? That is where you would have to get them to call the bank and put a stop on that, so that they can't access anymore and close it out. Now, once you have,
close it out.
What's the proper term?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to say that, because that would be, it becomes due. Sean can fill in the blanks there.
Yeah, there's a proper term for it. But then once the agreement for sale is registered, and I'm assuming you're getting a power of attorney because there's no equity. Once the power of attorney is registered, they can't go and refinance the property again, because they would need your signature, because you have power of attorney on the title now. So that once you've asked them on the closing date, you've asked them to, whatever that term is, to stop them from having access to any of the equity. Now you got a power of attorney, which prevents them from doing anything else. Barb Shepard, the bank wouldn't refinance as the HELOC and mortgage are beyond value. Also, if they are older, seniors on pension won't qualify. Yep, absolutely. I should be reading these before I post them. And Sean agrees. Likely cheaper payments are overall with an interest-only HELOC. Yes, if it was to be pushed into one giant mortgage, it would be principal. It'd be interest and principal. So it's actually a good circumstance. Valden would ask for a one-time extension term, 2 to 3 years, for sure. And you can also put it in a way as an extra term, saying the seller gives the buyer the option to extend an additional 2 or 3 years, and just explain to them that I need an out in case the market doesn't do what I need it to do, or something happens with the property. I need to make sure that I'm able to make money and I'm not going to lose money. I'm willing to take this problem off your hands and inherit it, but this is what I need in exchange. I think if you word it that way, they'll be okay with it.
It's actually in the financing schedule, the renewal. So the buyer has the right to choose that.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, got to be careful talking to the bank, for sure. If you're not on title, you're on the mortgage, the seller should be talking to the bank.
And generally, especially with this deal, keep in mind that it's kind of 100% financed. So we don't really want to bring a lot of attention anywhere for the mortgage or the HELOC. So that's the trust comes into play.
For sure. If the sellers want that solution, and you're dedicated to helping the sellers with that solution, you just want to make sure that you set them up properly, because if it does go sideways and you're not able to do it, then they're in a pretty crappy situation. So that's about it for the questions. Comments. So we got one says deal. No one else says no deal. Sounds like there was a bunch of, Valden and Sean and Don. They all had some comments. So what do you think? Deal or no deal? What would you do? We'll leave it open for a couple more minutes. I am still on the fence. I'm not sure.
Oh, look at what Sean just said there. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That right there is creativity.
That all of a sudden got a little sexy, didn't it? It's like, ooh,
yes.
And cash and a house.
Yeah, because you know my story from Saturday. I did something very similar, and it made that crappy deal and that horrible situation go like this. So right there, you could potentially have them max out the HELOC if there is accessibility and get them to give you the cash. Then you can offer them whatever purchase price that works out to be, whatever the loan amount is. It could be equal to the underlying total mortgage plus HELOC amount.
Right.
We got 2 for deal.
I think it definitely is a next step exploration. I go deal.
You froze and you said next step, and I missed it.
Sorry. I say that I would explore this further, for sure. Now you have me saying for sure.
Me too. It's coming back to what I was talking about, where you are in your investing career. I'm not 100% sure whether me personally, I would want to take on this risk, but I'm kind of only going for home runs now. So early on, absolutely, I would have taken this. Absolutely, I would have figured it out. And I think that if you are creative and you combine it with other creative strategies, I think any deal can be solved. I just don't know what that combination is quite yet. I have to think about it a little bit more, but I know that almost any deal you can make it work. Any deal. It just depends on what you need in return to make it work in order to provide that solution. Got a bunch of deals. Yep. I don't see any no deals, so I think it's 100% a deal.
I think it's a qualified deal. If as Valden says as well, just make sure that everything is going to fit, because it's a little tight, depending on what your tolerance is for negative cash flow, carrying costs, all of those things. So.
Who was it that mentioned on Saturday? Someone mentioned on Saturday that you don't want to take on too many negative cash flow properties, because eventually, if something was to go wrong, or you're floating thousands of dollars every month, that could put a strain on your household. And I thought the same way. I took a lot of negative cash flow stuff on, and I combined them with great strategies, but I stopped. I said, no, like if anything goes sideways on any of these deals, I don't want this to affect my family. So I'm not saying go out there and be loose and cowboy and cowgirl, but take advantage of the opportunities. Just be safe. Just make sure you know your limits and play within it. I don't know, it's dumb. But it's the truth. Like you should know what your risk tolerance is. Establish it. Know what you can afford. Go through all the possible what ifs. And Sean says negative cash flow is the alligator that will eat your lunch. Yeah, that is definitely one way of putting
it. The analogies we got going today are just great. Gambling, cowboys, yeah.
Barb also mentioned if you get your cash from the HELOC max out that Sean was referring to, you can use it to reno. Absolutely. That can pay for the renovation. Just make sure you run all this through a mortgage calculator, figure out how much mortgage paid on you're going to be conservative with your asset appreciation on what the house is going to be worth. I never assume any appreciation. I always assume it's going to be worth the same as it was at the beginning, and make sure that you got enough profits and it's more than what your expenses are going to be. And always plan for your exit strategy and the costs that come with that exit strategy. Okay, I think that's it. Do you have any closing thoughts? It's a long one.
Yeah, if you have deals that you want to have, potential deals, you want us to run through it as a deal or no deal, send them on in. They're fun. If you want to know more about agreements for sale, we have a great home study kit, barrymaguire.ca. You might want to check that out. Those of you who have taken our courses, it's all in there. In the manual, in the recordings, it's all there. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you. See you guys.